All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline and SEL Mortgage. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am ready to discuss last night's ugly Denver Nuggets loss as they lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves, get smashed by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Final score 115-95. Unfortunate reality for this Nuggets team is that they have not been able to string together a bunch of great wins in a row. And I know that they've had winning streaks. There's a difference, right? There's a difference between beating up on sub 500 teams in a row when you get a good lull in your schedule and showing the league in games like these where you've got two OKC games in a row, a Minnesota game, you're going to have the Lakers on Friday. There's just a difference between handling those matchups and being positive versus going at Charlotte multiple times or Philly without everybody or things like that. So, look, we're not going to bemoan it too much, but we do have to talk about it. We do have to talk about the fact that Minnesota kind of owns Denver right now. There's some mental real estate there, I think. And yes, there were circumstances that hurt Denver. Minnesota was basically fully healthy, despite the fact that Rudy Gobert was coming off of an injury. And the Nuggets didn't have Aaron Gordon again, who I think might be bigger in this matchup than he is in the OKC matchup, just based off of what we've seen. So we'll talk about it. We will talk about it all. Thank you for tuning in if you are here. Apologies for the abnormal start time. Couldn't get up this morning. We recorded Locked On late last night, and usually I'm pretty good about getting up and doing a 10 a.m. recording. But I think given the changes that are happening here at MHS, the afternoon show has moved from 12 to 3 o'clock, like 3 o'clock, 3:30 in that general range. So there's time. There's time for me to do it now, and I might decide to do it now a little bit more consistently. Cedric is here in the comments. He's always here. Thank you, Cedric, for popping in. Mamba Forever says, why did Matt and Ryan not mention the fact that Malone's starting Russ was another mistake last night, needed size and physicality? Yeah, they do need size and physicality, but I'm not sure that they're going to get it from Peyton Watson and Zeke Naji that much. Like, those guys aren't, like, those guys were bad last night, frankly. It wasn't a situation where, yeah, you just played the other two guys in the rotation and it's different. I thought that Russ was pretty good overall, though I did get some criticisms for noting the fact that he had a bad 3-minute stretch at the beginning of the game, when Denver got down and never got back up. It is what it is. Jeff Morton in the comments, who I've been chatting with over text, checking in to see what local TV celebrity Ryan Blackburn has to say. Awesome. I was on 9 News yesterday. It was pretty cool with my buddy Adam Morris, and we were able to just chat about how big of a game this was for Denver last night. That didn't happen to the degree that we were hoping, but we'll get into it all. We'll talk about this game. We'll talk about everything, but thank you, Jeff, for checking in. Always appreciate talking to you, my friend. This podcast, as you guys know, is brought to you by the good folks over at BetOnline, number one source for everything online betting in 2025. The big sports tournament that you know and love is coming up very shortly, and BetOnline has you taken care of with all of the odds and wagers and everything that you could possibly hope for on that side of things. Make sure to check it out. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. They have everything that you could ask for. They are also offering a $200,000 bracket contest. So make sure to check that out. Lots of money there. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered. Make sure to stop by. All right, let's get into it. The Nuggets lose 115-95, and I'm going to start it framing this way. What's more concerning in your mind as Nuggets fans? Is it the offense where they only put up 95, Or is it the defense where every time it felt like Denver was getting a little closer, they made a defensive breakdown or several in a row, and the game got back out of reach once again? I'm curious to see which you believe is more pressing against this Minnesota team, because Denver doesn't look like themselves offensively against this Minnesota team. They haven't for much of the season. But then if you look at the other end of the floor, it's not like Denver's really putting up a lot of resistance on that end to the degree that Minnesota can't figure it out. It felt like Minnesota knew exactly what they were going to do, how they were going to attack the Nuggets, and they had several pressure points that they could attack. Don't Tell Santa Cruz says defense. Reckless is TW Reckless says combination of both. My dog says always the defense. Something to that. Definitely something to that. It always feels like Denver will eventually figure out the offense. But last night, it didn't feel that way. I noted the start of the game, basically the first 8 possessions. If I recall, you had a Murray missed floater. You had Jokic missed free throws. You had 2 Russ turnovers. You had a missed Christian Brown shot. I believe you had 2 missed Russell Westbrook threes, and then Russ got to a nice transition layup off of a breakdown. But like Denver went 0 of 8 in their first 8 possessions in this game. And I honestly believe that against this Minnesota team, the reason why the Nuggets look so inferior is because they get so rattled on the offensive end. Murray scored 1 point and was 0 of 7. He did not look like himself. He did not look like the player that just had flambéed the OKC Thunder in the previous matchup on Monday. It's kind of wild to think about. Michael Porter, 3 of 10 from the field in this game, 10 points, 9 rebounds, 0 of 3 from 3. Did get to the line 5 times and went 4 of 5, but he was a minus 31. It is notable to me that the minutes that Michael Porter has been out there in these 2 recent losses, he was like a minus 26, far and away the lowest plus minus in that OKC loss on Sunday. And now he's far and away the lowest plus minus in this loss. I don't know what it is, because I honestly thought that his head up defense against Anthony Edwards was pretty reasonable in this game. But it's just the rotation stuff. There are some things behind the scenes that you got to delve deep into. And maybe I should be doing more film study on that to see what's actually going on and whether it's actually his fault or not. But it is notable to me that, look, minus 31 in a game that you lose by 20, that's notable. That's not good. And then Murray, of course, he finishes 4 of 15 from the field for 12 points. He does have 8 assists to 0 turnovers, so it wasn't all bad. But it just looked like he was moving in molasses out there against this team. And there were so many times that Denver it didn't look like they knew what they were doing. And kind of surprising that Denver only turned the ball over 10 times, because it felt like way more. It just felt like every single time they did it, Minnesota capitalized in a big way. Actually, it's funny. So Minnesota had 15 turnovers, but they only conceded 15 points. When Denver had 10 turnovers, but they conceded 19 points. Denver's transition defense has just been a nightmare. And you've seen it over and over in these most recent 3 games, that when Denver makes a mistake, teams make them pay consistently. And I don't know what it is. It just feels like, and maybe that's part of the reason why Michael Porter has struggled in the plus minus department. It's because he does not get back in transition very well. Jokic is arguing a fair amount of the time and jogging. Porter's jogging. And it leaves guys like Murray, who's undersized in matchups like these. Russell Westbrook, who is, again, like undersized, like 6'3", 6'4". And then Christian Brown, who's 6'6", but 6'7". But there's only so much that those 3 can actually do. And Denver is at an impasse in this matchup, because the mistakes that they make on the offensive end have spiraled so much on the defensive end. in those two most recent losses. You limit the mistakes and you limit the amount of damage that you can do to yourself. But even still, like in the half court, the first half, it felt like Minnesota was generating such great shots over and over and over again. And the ones that they were missing, they were in and outs, they were rattling, they were very close. It felt like Denver was catching a break in a lot of those cases. Did not feel like Denver did anything to affect Minnesota at all. That's tough. That's a tough place for Denver to be. I think that like this is just one of those matchups that you want to avoid. Like it feels like Minnesota has their number, much more so in a way that like I actually think that they could be competitive in an OKC series. I don't really feel good about this one. There are others that do feel good about this one. There are others that think that this is like the more positive folks in the media room were saying, this didn't feel like the previous losses against Minnesota, where those were like inevitable, completely overwhelming. This one felt like they were tired. And there is a point to that. Like they were on their third game in 4 nights. They had just played 2 very highly contested matchups against OKC. Don't let the final score of the first one kind of dissuade you from that. They were in that game for 3 quarters and then it got blown open in the 4th. But then they were very good in the second one. And it's a very competitive environment. And that's a tough place for Denver to be because they have such a short rotation. These guys are playing so many minutes. And you can understand why things went the way that they did. But it sucks. Like you don't want to see Denver lose to this team over and over and over again. They've lost 5 games in a row to this Minnesota team. And game 6, game 7 obviously feel that way. The first game that these teams matched up in the regular season was early on and it had a different feel, but still to me didn't like, I know Denver had chances to win that game and were actually up late. It kind of felt fluky to me at the time. And these most recent ones in January and then now feel more like they did in the other series. So I don't think Denver's figured anything out. I don't think they figured anything out against this team. And I think that Denver gets overwhelmed. I think Murray gets overwhelmed. I think Porter gets overwhelmed. Christian has a lot of pressure on him in this series because he has to guard Anthony Edwards. And they can't double Ant in the same way that they double Shea because the talent around Minnesota shooting-wise is much better. Like people don't really fully appreciate the difference in three-point shooting between OKC and Minnesota. It is different. And like you just trust guys like Dante DiVincenzo and Naz Reid and even like maybe not Julius Randle as much, but Jaden McDaniels has been hitting those shots and Mike Conley hits those shots all the time. It feels different when you double Ant versus when you double Shea. And they also have the athleticism to make you pay on the glass that OKC does not. So if Denver can't score against Minnesota, they are not going to win a series against Minnesota. Period. End of story. Can you chalk it up a little bit to fatigue? To like Murray looked a lot like he was dribbling through molasses a lot of these possessions. Do you think that he can be a little bit more active, athletic in a playoff series? Maybe, especially when there's time in between games. Yes. But they're also kind of wearing down because they're playing a lot of minutes. Murray's played a lot of minutes this year. Jokic has played a lot of minutes this year. So I'm curious to see what Nuggets fans think. What means more, this Minnesota loss or the OKC win? Because there's a lot of folks, and I've even seen it in the chat here, there's a lot of folks that say, okay, that OKC win was a fluke. They scored 140. They shot the ball extremely well. Fluky kind of shooting. OKC will be more adjusted in the series. I don't know. I don't know if I can fully say that. I don't want to fully say that if I'm Denver because you want to give them the benefit of the doubt that because they are the second best offense in the league in overall offensive rating. When Jokic is on point, when Murray is on point, they have the capability to do this to anybody. the thing is that I just think that Minnesota makes them more uncomfortable than OKC ever could. Rudy Gobert is a tremendous defender. And while Jokic could score 40 against him on a consistent basis, he has to work hard. And Minnesota is still going to try to take away the other matchups. Anthony Edwards is going to make Murray uncomfortable. Jaden McDaniels is going to make Porter uncomfortable. Like, that is the story of this, is that it often feels like Jokic is going 1-on-5 in so many of these games. And credit to Russell Westbrook. I will make sure to say that again. I was pretty impressed with, and I noted this on social. I was pretty impressed with the way that he handled the dribble pressure, because they were pressuring up on him as well. Murray couldn't get past that. He couldn't deal with that pressure that well. Porter, of course, could not deal with the ball pressure that well. Westbrook did. He was making good decisions with the basketball. He was getting downhill. He was finishing at the rim. And then he hit a three. Like, there were some other good things that he did as well. So it's tough. It's a tough place for Denver to be. And I don't know how to fully evaluate it. But what it looks like to me is a Minnesota team that has Denver's number, that plays a physical brand of basketball that the Nuggets struggle to deal with. And the more that Denver has to put into the offensive end to be successful, the less they can put into the defensive end and the more vulnerable they get on that. So if I'm Denver and you're in this matchup, I think you avoid this one as much as possible. I think, Denver's the 2 or the 3 seed. Minnesota's the 6 or the 7 seed. If you believe that Minnesota is going to be the 7, you lose as much as possible. You try to get to that 3 or that 4 seed, and you just avoid them. If Minnesota continues to win, and they're kind of in that 5-6 range, let's say they're trending towards that 5 seed, I don't think that they're going to be able to get that high, but you never know. If they get up to the 5 seed, you win as much as possible, so you try to get to that 2 or 3, and you just try to avoid this team, because it's not like, I don't think that should be offensive to people. And there's a lot of people that think that would be ducking the smoke, because it is. Like, who didn't have a hard time in the playoffs last year? Boston, because they didn't play a very good team, like, at all, at any point. They did not play a very good team. And it makes it easier for them to deal with that stuff when other teams are injured, when they've had an easier path. And I just think that the way that if Denver's going to win a championship, it's going to be because they got help. It's going to be because somebody else helped them out. And Denver should try to help themselves out by avoiding this team as much as they can. I think they could beat OKC sooner than I think that they could beat Minnesota. I certainly think they could beat the Lakers before they beat Minnesota. They'll be offended by that. I don't care. And maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is not as big of a deal. I'll be looking forward to that April 1st matchup to see if Denver has any spine when they get a little bit more rest, and after not playing OKC twice in a row. We'll see what happens. Will Denver show any little bit of pride in that matchup? Will they show any little bit of competitive spirit and hustle in that matchup? See what happens. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to chat about the final 16 games of the season and a little bit more on this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll. Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Are you looking for a great mortgage company that you can trust? Hundreds of happy customers and a 5-star reputation, SEL Mortgage is the right company for you. They're doing great with mortgage loans, self-employed loans, down payments, second mortgages, things like that. There's a lot of different ways that SEL Mortgage can help you out. Just make sure to call 303-790-2222 or visit myspecialmortgage.com. Let them know that you came from Mile High Sports. All right, we're back here. Pickaxe and Roll. Make sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button if you can. Would really appreciate it. Final 16 games of the season are going to be very interesting. Denver right now, just seeding wise, they are in a pretty good place. They're going back and forth, and now it's interesting. Memphis, team that I did not expect to be back up there. 4-game winning streak for the Memphis Grizzlies. Denver is now tied with Memphis at 42-24. They are just percentage points ahead of the Lakers at 40-23. The Lakers still do not have LeBron James back. He was hurt. He suffered I think it was a groin injury. Houston is at 41-25. They're still in this tier. So Memphis and Denver are tied at 42-24. The Lakers are 40-23. The Houston Rockets are 41-25. Golden State's made their way up to 6th. Minnesota's at 7th. Golden State's at 37-28. Minnesota's at 38-29. I'm not sure so Denver's at 24 losses. I don't think they're going to drop below 5th. It's going to be very difficult for them to do so. Final 16 games, if Denver goes 10-6, that means that they'll get to 52-30. For Minnesota, for example, to catch up with them, they would have to go 14-1 the rest of the way if Denver just goes 10-6. So that's how these magic numbers work late in the season. Once you have earned a certain number of wins or prevented a certain number of losses from happening, you're going to be okay from that perspective. DTSE, I've seen your tweets. I've seen your messages. I know that they have a shit defensive rating, obviously. You don't have to tell me twice, my guy. You were saying this in the show last night as well. Denver, final 16 games, how do they approach it? How do they figure out what they need? Like I said, that they should try to avoid Minnesota if they can, but they should also try to get home court if they can in the first round series. Makes it easier if you go 2-0 at home in a first round series. You're going to be setting yourself up well that all you have to do is just go 1-1 on the road, and then you win game 5 at home, and then you've got a short 5-game series in the first round. Now, whether they can actually do that or not remains to be seen. If they're facing Minnesota, it will be a 5-game series the other direction. Actually, I don't know if that's true. We'll see what happens. So the funny thing is that last year the Suns faced the Minnesota Timberwolves 4 times in the regular season. The T-Wolves got smoked 4 times, 4-0. And then the Suns got smoked in the playoffs, 4-0. So you don't necessarily know if a regular season matchup is going to translate to the playoffs. In this case, I think we feel pretty comfortable Minnesota's got Denver's number in some way. So they're going to try to avoid that. They're going to try to figure that out. But the most important thing that they can do in these final 16 games is figure out exactly how much rest they need with their starters and see what they can do to get themselves ready physically. Aaron Gordon is still out. He was doubtful, warmed up yesterday, didn't end up playing. I'm curious to see how quickly he tries to get back on the floor, whether it's against the Lakers, whether it's against Washington, whether it's against some teams in the future. Denver has a whole bunch of games against playoff opponents still. It's not just Minnesota. It's not just the Lakers. They've got a variety of ones. They've got one more against Memphis, 2 more against Houston. They've got, I think, 2 more against Golden State, if I'm not mistaken. They've already played the games against the Clippers. They've got one more against Sacramento. So they've got a fair amount. They've also got another one against Milwaukee, among other teams, and Indiana. So they have plenty of playoff matchups that they still have to figure out. So it's not going to be an easy road. Me saying that they go 10-6, that's in some ways wishful thinking. Like, they're going to have to work hard in order to get to 10-6, especially if they don't have a healthy roster or if they're resting guys on a consistent basis. So what do? How do they handle it? Are they going to play these guys down the stretch? Are they going to go all out trying to get a certain number of wins? Are they going to try to get a certain seed? Are they going to really try to fight off Memphis, who doesn't really have to work too hard for some of these wins? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think that there are going to be certain ones that Denver's going to try to figure out. But I also know that the harder that they work through these final 16 games of the season, the less likely it is that they are healthy and ready for the playoffs. It's just how it works. The teams that are able to shut it down in the post-All-Star break portion of their schedule are often the ones that have the best long-term view. Denver had that in 2023. Golden State had that in 2022. Boston didn't feel the need to shut it down, and they didn't really do. Although they did, they did rest their guys down the stretch last year and did a pretty reasonable job of making sure that they didn't play 78 games for 36 minutes a night. So the more often you can get rest, the better and more likely it is that you'll be successful. Last night I asked Nikola Jokic, and I asked him about rest. I asked him about the idea of that. And here's the direct question. How important is it to get rest before the playoffs with how high the minutes have been lately for the team? And Jokic, true to Jokic form, said, I don't know. I don't think it's a big difference between 32 and 35 minutes or 33 and 38 minutes. You already warm up. You're already in the game. If it's that different between 45 and 35, maybe, but I don't think 2 or 3 minutes is a big difference. And then I followed up and said, what about the difference between 35 minutes and 0 minutes, potentially resting some games down the stretch? And he hemmed and hawed about that. He didn't like that. He says, I don't know. It's hard. It's very far away. So now he said it's very far away, but the fact is that the Nuggets have 1 month left in the season. Today is March 13th. The final day of the season, of the regular season, is April 13th. So they have 16 games in these next, 31 days? Basically a game every other day. They've got some back-to-backs mixed in. Obviously, they've got the Lakers one. And Washington. They have another back-to-back on the 23rd and 24th. Another one on April 1st and April 2nd. And then that's the final set of back-to-backs. So how they handle that down the stretch is going to be fascinating. Are you going to try to get Aaron Gordon back? Are you going to try to play him as many minutes as you can to kind of get the chemistry right? Are you going to rest Jokic at all? Like, of these final 16 games, does Jokic play 12, 11, 14, 15, 16? What about Murray, who has played the exact same number of games, I think, that he played last year, and he's still got 16 games left to go? Is he going to rest? Is Christian Brown going to rest? Is Michael Porter going to rest? It feels like these guys are wearing down again, like what happened last year. So are you going to learn from your mistakes? This isn't just a Michael Malone question, because Michael Malone will play them a lot of minutes during the game. And that's what Jokic is talking about effectively. He doesn't care how many minutes he plays during the game. He doesn't think it makes that much of a difference. But for Malone's sake, he wanted Jokic to rest. He asked him about the possibility of Jokic resting on Monday on the second night of a back-to-back after he hurt the elbow. And Jokic was like, no, he doesn't want to rest. So are the Nuggets going to be able to tell Jokic and kind of get across to him the value of being as rested as possible for those moments? I don't know the answer to that. What about Murray? What about Porter? What about Russell Westbrook, among other guys? Like, these guys have to find time in my opinion, to rest, to get themselves right, to prepare themselves for the playoffs. And I just don't know if they are in that mindset yet. And maybe that's what he's talking about. It's still a long way away. Maybe he doesn't feel like this is even a conversation until game 75 of the season. And then you rest in 2 of the final 7 games or 3 of the final 7 games or whatever. I don't know. What I do know is that if Denver approaches, if they approach the playoffs the same way that they approached them last year, they got burned last year because they didn't have enough rest. If they approach it the same way, they're going to have the same result. It just is, it's going to happen. I feel extremely comfortable saying that. Denver has to be smarter. They have to approach things smarter than they did before. And I don't know if they will. I don't think it's going to happen. So we'll see. We'll see if Jokic is willing to sit out. We'll see if the Nuggets can get to him. We'll see if the Nuggets can get to anybody else. We'll see if Gordon can get back healthy. I'm curious to see how that works out. Will the Nuggets, will they figure it out? Can they figure out this matchup? Anthony says it here in the comments. Nuggets were tired yesterday. Wolves had 2 days of rest before playing the Nuggets. Yeah, like there's clearly, I mean, the two teams clearly look different athletically, but they also look different athletically in the playoffs last year. And I don't know how different it is. Like, it's kind of going back and forth between those. So I'm curious to see what happens there. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on. The team doesn't look very happy. The team looks stressed. There's a lot of pressure. This is the time in the season where things get very difficult. Russell Westbrook actually talked about this before. This is a time in the season where you have to make sure that you're staying together as a team. You're not blaming each other when things go badly, or when you start to see the alarm bells. You come together as a team. You don't fall apart. You don't split. And I don't know what's going to happen with this group. The deeper we get, the closer we get to April, and hopefully this team can make it to May. Hopefully they can make it to June. I'm very curious to see how they handle it. Folks, that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline and SCL Mortgage. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. I will be back. I'm going to be back on Saturday. Or would you rather a podcast on Saturday following the Lakers game, or a podcast on Sunday following both the Lakers and the Wizards game? I think for my own view purposes, I'm probably going to do the one on Saturday. That probably makes more sense, but we'll find out. We'll see how it goes. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I will talk to you guys very soon.